Want to give a quick shout out to all of my patrons. Thank you, as always, for all of the support. And I was done reading this book a few days ago because I was in Disneyland and I didn't want to really do a review while I was there. Okay, so I got finished reading To Ride Hell's Chasm by Janny Wurts, and I want to give you this unedited review upon finishing the book, which was just a few days ago. So I like this book a lot. I'm going to ultimately give it 4 out of 5 stars. I have a lot of mixed feelings about it because I felt like it had like the highest of the highs, but unfortunately was accompanied by some lows, especially in the ending, and I'm a little biased towards really wanting my endings to be really good. I would be much more likely to give a book 5 stars if it started off kind of weak and ended hot than I would be the other way around. And I'll come out and say right now that I bet, while not a lot of people watching this review are going to have watched this before, for the ones that have watched this before, have read this book before, but the ones who have read this book, I bet most of them will have an opposite opinion to mine, where they're going to say they love the ending. But it just didn't work for me, and that's okay. But I still it didn't sour me towards this book. I just couldn't really give it, quite up to a 5 out of 5 standard. I am going to sound a little negative about this book, though, because I really felt like it had so much promise to be one of my all-time favorites. There were so many good things about this. I find that the writing of Janny Wurts, and this is the first book that I have read from her, and I'm greatly looking forward to reading more. Her writing is just incredible. I'll talk more about the prose in a little bit, but she's very talented, and she can sure craft a great story. And it just, there's so many positive things to say about this author, and I don't know why I've held off reading her stuff until now. And I think she's written quite a few books, so that's awesome. I got a lot more books to add to my TBR. So let's talk a little bit about the plot here. And before going into the plot, I want to kind of vent a little bit because when I finished getting towards the end of this book, I went and I kind of really took a long look at the book cover for this book, which I try not to do. And there were 2 major problems I have that are so upsetting. One is the book cover itself. The book cover itself is a major spoiler. And maybe there's different editions of this book cover, but it's a huge spoiler. It's a spoiler because you think you're reading a book about X, and it turns out that you're kind of reading a book about Y, and I don't want to explain what Y is for those of you that have not seen the cover. I'll try to find a different one to put up on the side of the screen at the beginning of the review, but maybe there's only one, and then I'll have to spoil it too. But it would be so much better if you didn't really know what the cover was when that reveal happened. And because I had already seen the cover, I hadn't read the blurb, but I had seen the cover, I kept waiting for that moment to happen. So when it finally did, I was like, all right, there it is. But the emotional impact it would have had I not done that would have been so much greater. So I don't get that. I don't get spoiling a book that deep into the book with the cover. A cover should spoil, the first 10%, which leads me to my second major complaint. The back blurb spoils up to the 60% way of the book. What? The back cover should spoil at most the first 10% of the book. It's hard to, and I know this well because I review books non-spoiler. It is hard to convey your thoughts upon a book or summarize a book without spoiling anything, but it is possible. And you don't have to do it by giving away so much. So I'm going to talk about the plot. I am not going to spoil up to that 50% mark. I'm going to do my traditional, just the beginning of the book. I know that might keep things very vague, but it's how I roll. And apparently not how the publishers to this book rolled. So this book is about, it's set in this kind of medieval setting, as kind of most fantasy books are. And right at the beginning of this book, you find out that the princess of this kingdom, who was set to be married later that evening, is gone. And you don't know why she's gone. You're immediately brought a couple theories about why. To the reader, you're told that she's been kidnapped. And internally, as you're reading this, you start to think maybe she just ran away. And you don't know what it is. And, it's I will say that, it is definitely more of a surprise on what it is. I don't think I'm spoiling anything by saying that. So it does keep you guessing throughout. And you don't know, like, if she did get kidnapped, what faction did it, who was involved, and if she ran away, you don't know why. There's a lot of unanswered questions here. But the job of getting her back really centers around two main people. Seemingly the whole kingdom's on the lookout for this young woman. But the book focuses on these two main characters. It focuses on this foreign-born, like, desert character. I think his name's Mikhail, is how you say it. And he's a foreigner. He's, like, seemingly the only foreigner in this story. And he is, you're told from the get-go that he is more than capable. He's got physical prowess that is unrivaled. And he's got some magical powers. It's kind of lighter on the magic, and it's really the only magic you're going to see for a large majority of the story. But his gift that only he really has in this story is that if he, like, touches a piece of clothing or an item that somebody had on them, he can see through their eyes, which is very important when you're looking for somebody that is gone, right? So he's very important to this story. Then his boss, I think his rank is like captain or like captain of the guard. And he's obviously a step up from this other character who, has a lot of people under him. The other one does, but, he's definitely not top of the totem pole here. And they would never put somebody like this at the top of the totem pole because the people here are very racist. And, this other guard is this boss. They're kind of working together to try to solve this mystery. And it's a classic kind of mystery story. But as it gets along, you find out that the themes of this book are not so much the basic, whodunit plot. It's really a story about racism. And there's bigger things at play here, but you find out very early on that pretty much everybody suspects that this guy, Mikhail, because he's the only foreign guy, that he was involved. And that because he has this magic, he must have done something to do this. And as you're getting POVs from this character, as the reader, there's no way this guy did it. He's very pure-hearted, and he's doing his best to find this woman. And you feel like this injustice against him, where everybody's out to get him, and everyone's out to frame him. People are out to kill him. And he's just going to put his head down. He's going to do his best. And there's this clamor from everybody, from the king down to the lower levels, that are saying, you got to stop this guy. You got to arrest this guy. Clearly he did it. And his boss is constantly trying his best to appease everybody. He's trying to, not get fired himself. But he also understands that the best hope of rescuing this woman is with this Mikhail guy. And so he's going to try to do what he can to get her back too. It gets way dramatic. Tons of plot turns. The story ends up kind of being this totally different thing as it goes along. And I can't really say much more about that. I wish I could, but that's not what I do on my channel. But if you want to talk spoilers, come to my Discord channel. The link is down below. I'd love to talk to you in more detail about it, but that's the main plot here. So let's jump into the world building. The world building is incredible. I was transported to this world. I so vividly saw it, even though it did have kind of this classic, medieval kind of setting. It felt very well realized. There were eventually many different locations that we got to go to. Janny Wurts writes in this such a vivid style, and the fact that she wrote this really self-contained story, I think the whole book covers like 5 days, and the first day is like 200 pages of this book. Everything is in such bright, clear detail that you can't help but just be, your imagination run wild and just really seeing so clearly everything that's going on and everything that the author really wants to convey to you. So it's extremely well done. And I won't forget the world anytime soon, that's for sure, which is my mark for good world building. The characters are incredible. This main guy, Mikhail, is written so wonderfully. And a lot of the cast around him, from the seemingly kind of good guy boss of his to the more sinister types that are trying to frame this guy. You hate them, which is a great thing. You want to hate characters if the author wants you to hate them. But the characters are very well done. They're deep. It's got this wonderful prose that makes them all just kind of pop to life. It's everybody feels so different. Nothing feels samey. And really this main character has such a great character that I've never really read about before, where he knows he's an outsider. He knows everyone hates him. He knows he's not wanted. But he is going to do what he believes is right. And what is right is not always, in fact, not often, what he's told to do. But he has this internal, ethics and, to be damned with everything else. He's going to do what he believes is right. And I love that kind of character. And to have this racism aspect thrown in there, it really felt unique and fresh to me. The magic here was not great. It was this blend of, you had this one character who had this magic that felt very, self-contained, which is fine. But then the other magic that gets brought in, it's this super soft kind of magic system where, characters just have it and you don't really understand why or what they can do with it or when they can utilize it and why not. They feel super overpowered in some ways. So it's just, not great, but that's not what the story's really about. So I can't give it, tons of negative marks on that front. The prose, though, I can say incredible things about. Janny Wurts stands up there among the best that I've ever read. If you're looking for a book that's got that just wonderfully done prose, now I understand that prose is a very, lots of people everybody can read the same thing and have very different opinions on it. I don't think there's anybody that you could say is like undoubtedly perfect prose and that everybody would like it. Because, it's just, everyone has their own opinions. I find this to be great, better than good. And I suspect most people that read this would have a hard time knocking the prose here because it's a masterclass in great writing. I come back to, though, that my biggest problem here is the plot in parts. I found myself in the middle of this book so engrossed. It took a while to get into it. There's so many foreign names for things. It feels very slow. It felt like I was reading this very cliched mystery novel. But it turned into something unique and wonderful. And I just wanted it to keep going. But it went in a different direction that I didn't love. I kind of knew that I was in for it when, again, the title of this book, which is kind of a spoiler as it goes along, when the title finally clicks for the reader, you're like, oh, I'm going to get a lot of this now. And that's not the kind of thing that I love. So it just kind of felt like it faltered to me. And that's where my biggest criticism here is. But man, this is a good book. And, I'm not a standalone fan. This is a standalone. And I don't think I've ever read a standalone that I've given a 5 out of 5. I also have not read a lot of them. So I'm sure there are standalones out there that I would give that to. The 𝐒𝐨𝐬𝐿 Lamora, for example, could have been a standalone. Didn't need any more books. I would have easily given it 5 out of 5. Now, it kept going, so I can't call it a standalone anymore, but you get my point. But yeah, this is great. It's probably the best standalone I've ever read. It's wonderfully done. I want to say I can't say enough positive things because I do have criticisms, but it's great. If you can stand a mystery novel, if you love great characters, if you love a really tight, small story, and small in the sense of like, it's not this epic, far-branching thing. Everything takes place right here. And the timeline that it takes place is right here. If you're into that kind of thing, which I'm not super into that kind of thing, but I liked it. But if you're into that kind of thing, you're going to love it. So, check this one out. It's good stuff, and I'm really looking forward to reading more Janny Wurts in the near future. So, thank you so much for watching this belated review, and as always, happy reading to you. Thanks again to all of my patrons, with a special shout out to my Ascendant tier and Librarian tier patrons, Anna G., Brian, CJ, Darren, Jonathan, My Book is Lit, Nathan T, Nev's Book Channel, Ron Reich, Russell, Ryan L, Anna, Andra, Angelo, Ben, Blair, Brock, Evan, Harry B, Jeff Pixler, Joe, Maria, Michael Sugarman, Sky, TW57, Wacky, and Zion.